So what we're going to do now is, number one, we're going to count off to create groups of 4. So as we go down across everybody, just count off 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Sound good? Everybody understand how that works? All right, good. So let's start here. All right, great. Now we all have our groups. So what we're going to do is we're going to split into groups. We could have, perhaps group 1. 3? All right. We got 3s over there. We've got, maybe we have 1 over here, 2 over there, and 4 in the bar. But everyone has a chance. There you go with Paul. So everyone has a chance to take a moment as we set up for this. Before you go, don't go anywhere just yet. Take a few minutes, grab another drink if you like, grab some food on the way to your group area. And when we get there, we're going to talk about 3 different discussion questions. And these are going to be, I'm going to come around and I'm going to let each group know when it's time to move on to the next one. So that way we just keep things moving. But I want you to think about these things as we head into those groups. And, it struck me as we were putting this together that we're looking at financial independence in a very binary way. And I know that isn't necessarily the way that life is. But we are, for the purposes of this discussion, we are going to be talking about some things that are specific to women. They also might be specific to non-binary individuals or people who identify in different ways. That's something we can always discuss at a future event. But just so you know that we're being as inclusive as we can for this particular event. So the first discussion question is, what does it mean for a woman to be financially independent, and how does that differ from a man? The second discussion prompt that we'll have is, what unique obstacles face women in pursuit of or once achieving financial independence? And the third prompt is, how can financial advice be tailored specifically and authentically to women? So I think these are all things that we should think about as a community as we put together content for financial independence or personal finance or money management in general. So I will offer one of these cards to each group so that you have that to refer back to. And in the meantime, we're going to spend probably 5 to 8 minutes on each question. And then we'll just go through, and then when it's time to move on to the next one, we'll move on to the next one. After all that is over, we will come back here, and each group will have a chance to respond. So you might want to have one person as the scribe, and we have notepads for every group, and one person designated as the speaker. That's just one way you can do this if you like. And we'll come back and we will discuss, and it'll be really enlightening to hear what everybody has to share. Sound good? Yes. All right, great. So we determined 3 was here, right? And I think we had 1 here, and 2 here, and 4 over there. All right, have fun. Did everyone have a good discussion? I spied on a lot of your conversations, and it was really some interesting perspectives that I've heard. So I'm excited to get a chance to hear from everybody. We're going to start with group 4. We'll go around the room, all the groups, question by question. So group 4. If you've chosen someone who's going to be the speaker for the group, then we can do that. So what does it mean for a woman to be financially independent, and how does that differ from a man?
Oh, no, sorry. Okay, So group 4 is talking right now? Yes?
Yes.
Okay, question 1?
Yes.
Okay. So yes, okay. So from looking at the notes, it seems that for what, in comparison to a man, for a woman to feel financially independent, or what that means to a woman, in our group, in that context, was freedom. We talked about it's the ability to have choice, to make mistakes, to make decisions about her money, and being able to live an independent life where they are in charge of their finances, and just being able to survive and pay for what they need is what we have for number 1.
Okay.
So sorry, I was coming back. Yeah.
That's great. Great. Let's move to group 3.
Yeah, that was smart.
Yeah.
All right, so our group, we more or less said that financial independence for a man and a woman should look the same, but we've been taught different viewpoints historically. So when you look back a generation, 2, 3 generations, our grandparents were all taught a very specific thing about money, and that's been ingrained in us. But really what we should be aiming for as individuals, regardless of gender, is the same thing. And that's the ability to stand on your own 2 feet and not have to rely on someone else for money. The opportunity to make your own choices and not feel stuck is really the key to financial independence for both genders, our team felt. Thank you.
How about group 2? Got someone from group 2?
Back here. So we had kind of a similar thought process, that it's very like generational in terms of what the differences are. And one of the things that is a little bit different from that comment is that someone said that women seem to be a little more thoughtful and thought out about their financial situation, whereas men typically maybe act a little bit quicker without fully thinking things through, and they also kind of have an air of control, or they try and look like they're in control maybe when they're not fully, where women are okay being a little more vulnerable, and women should have the feeling that they can be separate from the man in like a marriage with their finances, but that's not always necessarily the case.
Sorry, I somehow got like nominated to do the speaking, but there were no notes taken, so it was like one of those things where like, hey, you're gonna speak, and I'm like, okay. So my group's gonna have to help because, yeah, it seemed like we really ended up talking a lot about prenups and just the importance of that for some reason. Like, well, not for some reason. It's a very important thing that a lot of people don't really think about. So, yeah.
I think the one thing we touched on that maybe the other people didn't mention was the institutional sexism that's involved in the whole wage earning of men versus women, and how for women it takes longer and harder or whatever to make as much money as men, and that the whole institutional sexism of that issue, and how women have more to overcome to get to their financial independence because of that issue.
Okay. All right. I think that's all the groups for question 1, right? Yeah, okay, so let's move on to prompt 2. What unique obstacles face women in pursuit of or once achieving financial independence? And let's start with group 3.
All right, so we talked about some systematic issues just built into the economy that affect women differently than men. And one notable one is childbirth. So if you're going to take off 6 or 9 months, let's say, from a job twice, let's say you have 2 kids, that's 18 months maybe. And in that 18 months, you might miss 2 annual cost of living raises and a promotion opportunity. And there's no time to ever get those months back. So women are inherently at a disadvantage with that. And there are some countries that try to overcome that by giving mandatory paternity leave equal to maternity leave. So in that case, both genders would have the same time off work. But in this country, when we have no required leave, mostly women take time off, which means men have just more career months, and that gives them an advantage that is not really fair. And there's just other things relating to healthcare and time away from work put women at a disadvantage over men. Even though today women get more college degrees and are generally better educated than men and should if you look at those numbers, be earning more than men on average. That's not the case. So there are things built in that need to be overcome.
We also talked about the pink tax.
Yes, the pink tax. We brought up the tampon tax and things like that. Men don't have to buy tampons. I never have to pay taxes on a tampon or buy one, and women have to pay taxes on them. I just read a story. I think 2 states, like New Jersey and one other, gotten rid of taxes on tampons because they're like, whoa, this isn't fair that we tax women on something a man would never buy ever. And that's another financial disadvantage, not even income related, that we have to think about.
So we also spoke about the systemic issues that women face, especially within the economy, as well as like institutionalized sexism. There's intersectional obstacles for women that start from the moment she's born. For example, talking about the types of jobs that women get. Yeah, we're getting more college degrees. That means more student loans. More student loans for jobs that don't pay as much, because when we were children in elementary school, boys got called on more than girls when it came to the STEM classes. And that sets a trajectory for women to pursue careers such as teachers or work in the nonprofit sector, which typically do not make as much money as, within the finance sector or becoming scientists. So there's that. Other obstacles also, we talked about healthcare, the fact that women will have to take some time out when they're pregnant, having children, raising children, as well as the fact that women have to take on different burdens and different decisions that men typically do when it comes to finances, such as what's going to go on with the family, as well as the pink tax as well. So as well as we talked about presentation, that there's different sort of expectations for how women are going to present themselves in society that do cost more money.
So we talked about the childbearing obstacle definitely, and how even like if you do take time off to stay home with your kids, getting back into the workforce is harder because you don't have experience for however many years you took that time, and so it's like, how do you get back in, to do what you were trained to do, and you've taken this break. So any other?
In addition to that, just being a woman, even if you don't intend to have children,
right,
the assumption is, and so
yes,
you're penalized just by the very fact that you're female, and the assumption is that at some point you will leave the workforce to have children.
Right, like if you're interviewing for a job, someone might look at you and go, oh, you might be having another kid, or how many kids do you have, and like, are you going to be having another one, so we might not hire you for that reason.
So we talked a little bit more about how in marriages it's pretty standard for, at least for a long time in the past, it was standard for typically the man to have all control over the finances, have all the information about the bank accounts, basically have all of that control, and that really set women up to have some dire circumstances if the husband, God forbid, died unexpectedly, or if divorce happened, or if there was financial abuse. So that was mostly what our answers surrounded, is just that there's unequal amount of control over finances when it comes to being in a relationship and in a marriage.
Yeah, very insightful thoughts. Let's move on to prompt 3. How can financial advice be tailored specifically and authentically to women? And I like this question because we have a good mix here of people who create the information that is put out and people who consume the information. So it's great to get both perspectives here. So let's start with group 1 for that one.
Well, we were saying, first of all, hearing stories is definitely compelling. Like hearing Chris's story and just being reminded, like, prenup isn't necessarily bad. When you hear it, and letting women know that, like this might be something that is important to know about. Also having your own credit established. It was kind of touched a little bit by another group in the second question, but just like if all of the house and everything, like all the bills are in your husband's name, then you have no credit and you're not establishing your own credit, and women need to know that so that they can actually be working on their own credit score. Anything else that you can think of?
I guess, from my point of view, given all the information that's accessible out there, I feel like there's no specific need to tailor the information based on gender, because the information it is what it is in some regard. I think we can just tell stories that are encouraging and that embrace people in a way, right? But I don't feel like there is an explicit need to adjust the message to make it work in a way. So I think there's no point necessarily making a distinction there. And I would like to believe that nowadays information is so accessible, for men and women, and there are content creators out there, both sides. So I follow female bloggers, right, because I can connect with them, and they're not specifically tailoring their message to men. I can just connect with the information because they made it, compelling for me to connect with it. So it doesn't matter to me.
Yeah.
So that's just my thoughts.
We took a definitely different approach to that answer. I think the general sentiment was that it is a very good idea to tailor financial information for women. It doesn't have to, it's not that all the information has to, but a certain amount could be tailored directly towards women, and that can be very impactful. And so some of the ways that you can do that, one, having role models, so having people that look like you do things that are really successful, gives you the confidence and basically lets you know that it's possible. So having women role models, being successfully financially independent is really big. Having women-only groups, so not to denigrate this meetup at all, but when women get together in a space and it's only women, conversations happen in different ways, and women feel way more comfortable, and they speak about things that they wouldn't if a man's in the room. So that's another way that can be impactful. And then also kind of reversing the idea that, so some women feel like they're bad at math, and thus they feel like they can't touch their finances. And so reversing the idea that you don't necessarily have to be good at math, or you don't have to be the smartest person to be financially literate.
Our time for 2 and 3 kind of bled together. So there was actually some great overlap. So one thing we talked about was we kind of agreed more with group 1, that the ultimate goals of financial education should be the same for men and women, and we don't need to differentiate, we were talking about credit scores, so a good credit score for a man and a good credit score for a woman is the same thing. So we need to teach everyone how to do that, whether it's managing bank accounts or credit scores or whatever else. But there's been a big history of men kind of taking care of themselves first, especially in relationships. We talked about gender norms. So we need to make sure everybody knows and understands how to take care of themselves if they're not being taken care of. And we talked about stereotypes like men know better about money, or we just didn't talk about it and the man took over. There's a lot of assumptions that kind of need to be broken down, but the ultimate place where we should end up is the same. Men's financial needs are the same as women's financial needs at the end of the day. And we have different challenges potentially to get to those needs, but what we're educating for, the goals at the end of the road, should be the same for everyone.
All right, so this is group 2, correct? I think we kind of fell in line with group 2 and what we were thinking. But,
This is good. I like the
we talked about how there are different life situations, different experiences, and different expectations that women do face, and that financial advice should be tailored for that, which means it needs to be inclusive and accessible. As to how, we really didn't get to that, but thinking about education, thinking about legislation, things that can change the conversation from grassroots bottom up, top down, sorry. But that's what we had to say.
All right. Well, that's really interesting, and it's great to hear so many perspectives. And I think being inclusive in a group like this is important because, yes, people outside of the mainstream expectation and they need their spaces, of course, to talk in a place that they don't feel threatened. But everybody else needs to know what those conversations are too. So it's great to be able to talk about it in a space like this. So thank you for all of this. I think these discussions were really interesting. I hope we have one more thing to do, and then after that you'll have more time to network, have some drinks, eat the rest of the food that's out there. And before we do that, I just want to thank everybody for coming. This was an amazing event. I'm so happy the way this turned out, and I really appreciate everybody who was able to attend, and I hope you were able to get something out of this. And once again, if you want to access videos and other information, PDF summaries, that sort of thing, that'll all be online, and I'll send you an email as soon as it's ready to go. Thank you again to NIFI, thank you to Kayla who sponsored and spoke, and thank you to Chris as well, and thank you to all of you who shared your viewpoints. It really is about everybody here. It's not just the speakers, it's not just the sponsors, it's not just the Plutus Foundation, it is this community, and it's really important for us to connect each other. So spend some time, if you need to get anybody's numbers or email addresses, you'll have certainly a lot of time to do that.